When it's busy. He's probably gonna go to church behind the back. They have a great sit up there, so.
Like the brains.
Yesterday I was drinking water at 3:30 because I'm having to water down in the morning and I've been in between the iron eating my back.
So, yeah.
And when I got through my teeth,
Yes!
so I got the last seat and a boat to see us in sacks.
I was gonna say, make sure you do.
Keep looking, but I can't. Last year I had potatoes and I didn't get them enough. And I had one huge potato and the rest were rotten because I've been eating so much. And I didn't know when to harvest. Well, I've been reading and it said boomers need to kind of wilt, what is it?
It's really green over there, right? Okay.
They must know
That's something to my knowledge over
they
there.
must have really draining soil. I don't think they were certain. It depends.
No, I want you to meet April.
But I somebody that
Nice alley.
Land there, so crops, they'll have to water again.
And then sandwich in between. Like,
Those that collaborate.
I didn't expect you to got me. That is when somebody dies, we'll get
There would be a response.
Oh, I think
Yes.
I bet you my hand from
And then one has a pin between.
And
And then one of them
so
said.
cool.
with
I
the-
thought you didn't get my pins. Well, as I was walking in, my water bottle turned over in my purse, and it just went everywhere. So, what do you need? Do you need just a paper towel? No, we're good. I got it done outside, just.
How is everyone?
Tired.
Tired, I know, right?
Yeah.
Tired. Today, so, if he's on his pain meds, he's okay. It's been rough. I added it up. If he took a full dose every 4 hours from the time of the surgery, they only gave him 3.5 days of pain pills.
No.
Right? And so, and he was finding he needed a full dose after, and so anyway, he didn't have any on Sunday. He was out of pain pills and he didn't sleep that night. He was in so much pain. So anyway, yesterday, long story short, I finally got him some more pain pills. And then asked the pharmacist, I was like, what can I do to help him sleep? And he literally said, did he have orthopedic surgery? Because those are really bad. And I was like, yes. And he's like, oh, come with me. And so there's some sleep pill that has antihistamine. So last night, he slept till 1 a.m. And then he slept after he got up, took a pain pill, and was asleep this morning. And then he fell back asleep. So I was like, I'll just keep giving him antihistamines until the worst is over. So, but if he's on the pain pill, he's okay. It just, I mean, it was lasting like 2 hours. You know, he's a big guy. And I know with the opioid crisis, they don't give it out like they used to. And I was like, what do I have to do to prove we're not drug addicts? You know, it's like, but anyway, I'm hoping the worst is behind us. But he's still. Pray that our cats stay off of him because I've woken up multiple times in the middle of the night with him screaming because the cat is like crawling on his arm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, oh, let me sit on this, and he's like, ah! So anyway, but like I said, I'm hoping the worst is behind us. But
It's gotta be, it's just gotta be.
yes, so 6 anchors in the arm, and yeah, it's a lot. So he's like, I keep telling him. Because he'd be like, am I doing something wrong? Like, no, you had your bones drilled into. Like, I'm like,
Yes.
And the muscles stretched.
Yes.
I mean, think of a window shape.
Yeah.
That up and tight up.
Yeah, so anyway, but thank you guys for your prayers. He will be here Sunday, although he was acting like he wouldn't be.
Oh, no.
But I was like, yes, you will, because that's the, before your sabbatical, everyone has to see you. So anyway, there's that. Crisis averted, I hope. Yeah, I'll just freaking kidnap him if I have to. Anyway, so.
We'll just bring it to your house.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, that works. I will say Sunday, so I will probably need some help, but after the camera's off, I'll talk about that. How about that? Okay, y'all ready for Leviticus? Thanks for your grace last week. We are getting to a hodgepodge of stuff. So we are in chapter 21 and 23. And yeah, let's just pray real fast and then we'll hop in. So Jesus, thank you so much for the opportunity to be back together, Lord, centered around your word with this wonderful fellowship of women. Lord, I'm so grateful for each one of them, who they are, what they bring to the body. Every one of them is necessary. I know they doubt that, but it's truth. And so, Father, I thank you for this company of women who are diving into your word on a Tuesday when they could be doing other things like scrolling on Netflix. And so thank you, Lord, that they are choosing the better part. And I just pray, God, today you open up our eyes, open up our ears, open up our heart to your word, even the weird stuff. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, so chapter 21. Chapter 21 goes back to talking specifically to the priesthood. We had some other chapters that were dealing with other things, but now this is like directly right back to the Levites. It opens with what's allowed for the average priest, and that means as opposed to the high priest, okay? When it comes to the dead. So it said, and the Lord spoke to Moses, speak to the priest, the sons of Aaron, and say to them, none shall defile himself for the dead among his people, except for his relatives who are nearest to him, his mother, his father, his son, his daughter, and his brother. Also his virgin sister who is near to him, who has no husband. For her he may defile himself. Otherwise he shall not defile himself, being a chief man among his people, to profane himself. This is so hard to wrap our heads around. Letter B, in today's culture, if you are a priest, you will deal with the dead. Okay, but that's unavoidable if you're a priest in today's culture. But in Hebrew culture, the priest's main job was not to deal with the dead, but it was to enter sacred space. Something we don't think about. That's why I love study. It was to enter, that was their main job. God made this clear. Okay, God made it clear, do not make yourself unclean by dealing with the dead. Except for what situations? What did you notice? Immediate family. It's like, hey, obviously if it's your immediate family, then yes, deal with that. But in this, it's crazy to think about. But these passages are addressing this. Can a priest make himself willingly unclean for a family member? And the answer is yes. God's like, yes, but there were certain limitations. And like I said, this is hard for us because we think of a pastor and all the things that they have to do, or, even in the hospital, there are priests who that's their job, right? You're dealing with that. So it's just, but this was not the priest's job in the tabernacle. So maybe you've never thought of that. But they shall not make any bald place on their heads, and all the men would be like, yes, God, please, no, right? Nor shall they shave the edges of their beards, nor make any cuttings in their flesh. They shall be holy to their God, and not profane the name of their God. For they offer the offerings of the Lord made by fire, and the bread of their God. Therefore they shall be holy. Now this is actually similar language to Leviticus 19. It's been a while. Anything you remember about Leviticus 19, and maybe I shouldn't even have that in there because it's been a bit. Look at it.
The I am Lords.
All the I am Lords, absolutely. I am the Lord, don't do this, because I am the Lord, and don't do this, and I am the Lord's. Absolutely. And I'm trying to remember if I'm thinking, because it's been a while since I looked at that, if there was anything about tattoos in that particular passage. But antiquity is clear. Letter D, antiquity is clear. The cutting of the flesh, the tattooing of the body, all of that was associated with the dead in mourning rituals. Now, it could be an act of spilling blood to the underworld for the gods on behalf of their request. Like the most well-known story we'll get to, obviously, is when Elijah, they're doing the showdown with they're cutting themselves, and that is like to beckon the gods to come to them, the god of the underworld specifically, and my life force is given to you, so here it is. But other than that, it was usually something about the dead. Let's look at Jeremiah 16:6. Somebody read what that says.
It says, both the great and the small shall die in this land. They shall not be buried. Neither shall men lament for them, or cut themselves, or make themselves bald.
There you
for
go.
them.
Are we seeing this idea? Being bald and cutting themselves. Also, Deuteronomy 14:1. What does that say?
You are the children of the Lord your God. You shall not cut yourselves, nor shave the front of your head for the dead.
Okay. Kind of becoming clear now, isn't it? One more. 1 Kings 18:28.
And they cried aloud and cut themselves after their custom with swords and lances until the blood gushed out upon them.
Nice. It's a beautiful picture. So we see this was in antiquity. You would shave yourself. You would offer hair to gods, to the dead. Your blood. This was things that was considered life force things, and this is something that they would do. And God is like telling the priest, you can't do this. Technically, neither can the Israelites. They're like, you definitely can't do this because you're entering sacred space. So today, tattooing is decorative, right? Everybody's got one except me and Jeff, it seems like. We're the only pastors in our age bracket that don't have some rebellious tattoo. But I would still be aware, even though it's decorative, if you have a little butterfly, whatever, I'm like, whatevs. Okay, that's fine. Just know it's forever. But I would still be aware if you mark your body for someone who dies. Even today, I'd be aware of that. The Bible tells us to flee. Here's a great rule, and I just wish everyone would come back to this without being weird about it. The Bible says to flee the very appearance of evil. It's just a good rule of thumb. Don't get weird about it, but just, hey, better safe than sorry. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I want to get to heaven and God be like, you tried a little too hard. Versus the devil being like, ha, you didn't try hard enough. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be weird and like legalistic, but just be aware that there's some weird stuff there, and Kinfish can tell you some stories. But letter E, the point is this. You ready? This is what God is saying. Pagans do this. We don't. He's defining a line. This is my people that worship the one true God versus the rest, the pagans. What they do, we don't do it. And so he's just making sure the priests know this. Okay? So then, they shall not take a wife who is a harlot or a defiled woman, nor shall they take a woman divorced from her husband, for the priest is holy to his God. Therefore you shall consecrate him, for he offers the bread of your God. He shall be holy to you, for I, the Lord, who sanctify you, am holy. There's a lot of this holy talk, isn't there? The daughter of any priest, if she profanes herself by playing the harlot, she profanes her father. She shall be burned with fire. Dang. That's like the first time we've seen this. This is like Salem witch trial stuff here. Okay, letter F. Here we find a capital offense. What is it? Harlotry. Okay? Harlotry. The question that scholars debate, because you can't have, one scholar, he probably disagrees with himself half the time, but if you throw another scholar in, oh my goodness, the question is, what type of harlotry is this referring to? And here's the different ideas. Number one, there's the general promiscuous behavior. Like, okay, you're just a loose daughter, you're just out there doing your things. Is this what this applies to? Other scholars would say this is prostitution for money. So this is a woman for hire to pay for her food or whatever. But then there's temple prostitution as worship. Okay? So most scholars believe it's referring to the last two, not that first one. Like, kill her, Like, if you're a priest and your daughter does this, she's got to die. Am I right? This is, like I said, so intense. But then thrown into this mix with the prostitute is a divorced woman. And anyone who's divorced caught that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And this seems harsh by today's standards, but not even today's standards. Even by Old Testament standards, this was harsh. And this is what I mean by this. The Old Testament actually allowed the average person to marry and divorce. Let's look at this. Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 4. When a man takes a wife and marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes, dang, because he has found some uncleanness in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hand, and sends her out of his house when she's departed from his house and goes and becomes another man's wife. If the latter husband detests her and writes her a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hands and sends her out of the house, or if the latter husband dies who took her as a wife, then her former husband who divorced her must not take her back to be his wife after she's been defiled for this abomination before the Lord. You shall not bring sin on the land which the Lord your God has given you as an inheritance. Okay, did you catch that? That second man, it doesn't say you can't divorce. You can divorce. Okay? The standard for a priest is more restrictive than the general Israelite. Did you catch that?
Yes.
Here's a good question. Is the same true for church leaders today? Look at 1 Timothy 3, 1 through 7, and then verse 10. Is this standard the same for church leaders?
You want me to read it?
Sure, go ahead.
1 Timothy 3, 1 through 7. This is a faithful saying, if a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, able to teach, not given to wine, not violent, not greedy for money, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not covetous, one who rules his own house well, having his children in submission with all reverence. For if a man does not know how to rule his own house, how will he take care of the church of God? Not a novice, lest being puffed up with pride, but fall into the same condemnation as the devil. Moreover, he must have a good testimony among those who are outside, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. And in verse 10, but let all these also first be tested, then let them serve as deacons, being found blameless.
Being found blameless. Did you catch that?
Yeah.
I wanted you to read the whole thing because there's a long list, not just men of one wife, but there's a long list for today's leaders in the church. A bishop is an elder, a pastor is what we would call them. And then Titus 1, 5 through 9, I'll read this one because I'm right here. It says, for this reason, I left you in Crete that you should set in order the things that are lacking and appoint elders in every city as I commanded you. If a man is blameless, the husband of what? One wife. And people try to argue that's polygamy. No, it's really not. Because we can see the standard for Leviticus. See what I mean? That's why you better know your Old Testament. Having faithful children. Oh, we just read that in Leviticus, didn't we?
Right.
Not accused of dissipation or insubordination. For a bishop must be blameless as a steward of God, not self-willed, quick-tempered, given to wine, violent, greedy or money, but hospitable. A lover of what is good, sober-minded, just, holy, self-controlled, holding fast the faithful word as he's been taught, that he may be able by sound doctrine to exhort and convict those who contradict. It's honestly, even though it's different, it's still the same kind of standard today.
Set apart.
Set apart. Absolutely. It's not a small thing to be an elder in a church. So why the restriction in the Old Testament for priests? Why this restriction? This is so good. As Michael Heiser said so well, I love this. The priestly marriage, and I would even say the pastoral marriage, represented the ideal. The ideal marriage as intended by God. The priesthood, in your next part, occupied sacred space, and their marriage represented that responsibility in a picture of covenant. A couple years ago, when I was blogging a lot, I journaled about how I believe I believe, and Jeff and I have gone round and round about this, I believe that every person has a right to heroes in the church. I really believe this. I mean, my dad was in ministry. He wasn't full-time, but he was an associate pastor of the church we were at. Like, everybody worked in the past because it was small, that the one that he was on staff for the longest. My dad had an affair. He's not in ministry anymore. Yeah. Okay. I'm very familiar with this. One of our spiritual sons works for a man who had 2 affairs and is still in the pulpit. And we've gone round and round. And he's like, but Desiree, you're not full of grace. I'm like, I know this story personally. Like, I'm not saying there's not grace, but you have a right to trusted heroes in the pulpit. Not that they're going to be perfect.
Right.
Not that they're not going to have like a moment where they have a bad day. Give them a grace for a bad day, a bad week, a bad month. I don't care. But on the whole, if they're losing their temper, it says, if they're greedy for money, American churches,
Yes.
like, you have a right to this. And I think that they represent the ideal marriage, but it's because it's like this idea that people are supposed to be able to look at you and go, okay, yeah, this is the idea. This is the thing that I'm shooting for. You have a right to that. I'm never going to back away from this. I'm sorry. And it's doable. And I can take my Bible and thump my husband when he's not doing it right. Exactly. Just kidding.
You know what younger people though do when they look at their youth pastors and their pastors? Well, they're okay and they did it.
Mm,
So
yeah.
God's grace, His mercy. I'll repent after.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
This is why even as youth pastors, number one, I'd be like, me and God are like this, and He tells me what you're doing. So I do that. But
Sometimes.
start asking a different question. It's not what can I get away with. It's how holy can I be? How close to God can I be? That's the right question we need to teach a generation. For sure. Okay, so going on. That was my little soapbox for today. There may be another, but we'll see. Letter J. Remember, in the tabernacle system, the closer you get to the presence of God, the greater the responsibility for holiness, perfection, innocence. These previous verses were for the quote-unquote average priest. Now, what applies to the high priest? Let's look, shall we? Verse 10 says, he who is the high priest among his brethren, on whose head the anointing oil was poured. God is like emphasizing this. Like, okay. And who is consecrated to wear the garments, shall not uncover his head, nor tear his clothes. Nor shall he go near any dead body. Whoa. Nor defile himself for his father or his mother. Are we seeing this?
Higher.
Nor shall he go out of the sanctuary, nor profane the sanctuary of his God, for the consecration of the anointing of oil of God is upon him. I am the Lord. And if he gets married, he has to have a wife of virginity. A widow or divorced woman or a defiled woman. Or a harlot. These he shall not marry. Even if she was a good, she's got to be a virgin, she can't be a widow. He shall take a virgin of his own people as wife. So he can't be marrying outside of the clan. Nor shall he profane his posterity among his people, for I, the Lord, sanctify him. What are the restrictions for a high priest?
The higher the level, the higher the requirement.
That's right.
For holiness.
So specifically in these verses, what is it? Can't touch the dead.
Have to marry a virgin.
Gotta marry a virgin.
Can't defile your mom.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, we have such a hard time. Like, but what a picture. Aren't you glad you aren't under this? Like, what a picture God was trying to paint for people. Yes.
Why is it that we're not under that? Just to help Ava.
Sure. So Jesus came and he fulfilled a lot of this for us, but also this was a temporary thing that Israel had to be a part of to try to keep them from living like crazy sinful people. So God put these restrictions of the law on them for a time period because he was trying to keep them from doing what they were doing, going out and sacrificing to demons and sleeping with anyone. And so he gave them these laws for a little bit until the time of Jesus when that law could be written right here. And now the will was changed. So there was he was always trying to teach them, the closer you get to me, the less defilement you should have in your life. And this is the lesson again and again. Yeah, absolutely. This is so intense. It's a lot. This is heavy stuff. Potential spam. No, thank you. Okay. Then the rest of the chapter, verses 16 through 23, they deal with those who are restricted from serving or coming near God's presence as priests. So if Aaron had a grandson who had lameness, blindness, mutilated face, blemish, hunchback, dwarf, this is literally what it all says, scabs, crushed testicles, that one is like very specific to me. It's weird. One leg too long, that is all listed in these verses. So this has offended a lot of people. Because it's like, wait, so if Aaron's great-great-grandson has one leg that is too long and he's got a club foot or whatever, he can't serve as a priest to come in, and it's like, yes, that was what the law said. This is offensive to us. But here's what we need to understand. It is not that these people were lesser than. We see this even with David later. Mephibosheth is welcomed at his table, although later there's a whole mess with that, but he's welcomed at his table and he's lame. Jesus, what does Jesus do to the lame people? He heals them. It's not that they are lesser to God. In this situation, it's all about teaching this in your notes, that wholeness, and the presence of God go hand in hand. They must be associated with one another. Where God is, remember, this is all about sacred space. Sacred space, where God is dwelling. Where God is, there is perfection. This has nothing to do with their worth or their spiritual condition. But you can see how if in a culture these people aren't allowed to come near and serve in the temple, how that would become this, they're less than us. It easily becomes this. But that's not what God intended. Also, much like with the marriage of the priesthood, this is a picture of what God always intended in his presence. Wholeness. Jesus will bring it. He will heal the sick. He will heal the lame. And then ultimately, when we are all in his presence, when Christ returns and the resurrection of the dead, we will be whole in his presence. It's always God's intention. And so this was a little picture of, listen, in my presence, there is wholeness, and that's the way it's got to be. Okay? And like I said, it's hard for us to wrap our head around this. So that's that chapter. Whew, okay. Then chapter 22. Y'all okay on that first one? Yeah. I know it's, like I said, it's hard for us to fathom because we're under this age of grace that's so different. Chapter 22, 1 through 3, opens with God telling Aaron and his sons to be cautious with any food that is sacrificed. That's not their portion. In other words, the portion that belongs to God. Verses 4 through 7 is also a repeat of previous instructions regarding things that make people unclean. So why do you think God is repeating all of this?
Because it's really important.
It's really important, yes. It's really important. And there's probably a good chance they forgot. Anybody ever forgot something God told you to do? Yeah. I hate that. But it's true. Okay? And remember, by this point in Leviticus, they are most likely in a new land. They're settling in Canaan. And so, like, that some time has probably passed. And so this is like, okay, we need to kind of go over these rules again. Now that we're in a new situation and whatnot. So verse 10 picks up with a new instruction. It says, no outsider shall eat the holy offering. One who dwells with a priest or a hired servant shall not eat the holy thing. But if the priest buys a person with his money, he may eat it. And one who is born in his house may eat his food. If the priest's daughter is married to an outsider, she may not eat of the holy offerings. But if the priest's daughter is a widow or divorced and has no child and has returned to her father's house as in her youth, she may eat her father's food. And this is all referring to the portion of the offerings that they were allowed to eat, okay? But no outsider shall eat it. By the way, you guys have done that for us this week. You've brought us the portion for us to eat food. So thank you, I appreciate it. If a man eats the holy offering unintentionally, then he shall restore a holy offering to the priest and add 1/5 to it. They shall not profane the holy offerings of the children of Israel, which they offer to the Lord, or allow them to bear the guilt of trespass when they eat their holy offerings, for I, the Lord, sanctify them. Okay, so here's all these rules about who can eat the food that the priest can eat, who can't, okay? Let's summarize this. Letter C. when it comes to the food allowed for the priest, the entire family may eat of it, including the slaves that are considered members of, quote unquote, the household. Additionally, the priest couldn't share it outside of their immediate household, hence the word outsider. That's what the word outsider means. It doesn't mean some like Egyptian or Canaanite, like, no. He's like, even outside the immediate family, you're an outsider. You're the outlaws, right? You got the in-laws and the outlaws.
Yes.
They're not allowed. Okay, so what is this all about? Oh my goodness. Here's what it's about. It's almost what we just read in Timothy and Titus, y'all. These distinctions designate the priest and their family as separate for the Lord. The priest and your family. Even though my dad was the associate, he was the worship leader, the associate pastor, he was over the singles ministry, they did kids ministry when I was a child, it was like all kinds of stuff. But, so I was not the PK, but I was a PK, pastor's kid. Trust me, there were certain things that we could not do that other kids could. Okay? This is a pretty funny story. Me and my sister were laughing about this just last week, or the week before last. So my parents were, we were pretty strict. Like things we couldn't do, chew gum in the church, wear pants. We had to set the example for everyone else. Luckily, I loved Jesus, so it wasn't hard. But my parents, I don't know what happened. My sister pulled the wool over their eyes or something, because she had a friend who wanted to take her to the New Kids on the Block. They were like the boy band in the 80s. And so my parents had actually said she could go, which is weird. I don't know if they thought this was some Christian band and they just were out of, I don't know. Well, when I was hanging out with the other pastor's kid, the lead pastor's kid, I told Kristen, my sister's getting to go see New Kids on the Block. Bad mistake.
Oh, yeah.
Because the next thing I know, we're coming home from a Sunday night service, and I'm in the back seat of the car, and my parents are like, Amber Desiree, that's my full name, by the way. Amber Desiree, did you run your mouth about your sister going to a concert? And I'll never forget this, because I was suddenly like, it was such a lesson, it's in my head.
Wow.
And they were like, because now Pastor so-and-so has said this can't happen, because it would set a bad example for other people going to a rock concert. And my sister was like, in the backseat. So mad at me, and she had every right to be mad at me, but I was just sharing information. But this is the idea. Your whole family is separate for the Lord.
Yes.
It's not just you that's signing up for ministry. Your whole family is brought into this, okay? Which I've told Jeff, I've seen many a pastor's wife ruin the ministry for her husband because she was not all in.
Oh, yeah.
Like countless times. Countless times. I went to Bible college not to get married, but because I felt a call on my life. Thought I'd be a missionary, honestly, working somewhere. And if he dies, I still maybe. I don't know. But I think it's a better idea than just marrying and being like, oh yeah, and this idea, like, because your whole family is brought into this thing. And this is what that's being said here. What does 1 Corinthians 7:14 say? Somebody read that to me. It's interesting. Not just pastors. What does this say?
For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Otherwise, your children would be unclean, but now they are holy.
Isn't this interesting? So this is a hotly debated thing that Paul just said. Okay, the unbelieving wife, the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and your children are not unclean, they're holy. Like, wait, what? This doesn't mean that the whole family is saved if they don't believe in Jesus, but this does likely mean, most likely, what are the status of the kids in a spiritually mixed marriage? Like, okay, what is happening here? This says they're separate. They're separate for the Lord. The expectation is that the family is set apart for God. Okay? That they're cut off from the total godless influence of the world. Like, you're separate. If one of you is believing, there's some type of separation that comes. There's a mystery to it, but my whole point is I'm pointing to the New Testament and the Old Testament. There is some truth for every person, even if your spouse is not a believer. I love this. It's stuff to hold on to and dig into. All right, letter E. I'm going to run out of time. As you look over verses 17 through 24 in chapter 22, you see the idea of wholeness in approaching God. So as y'all look back over that later, it's wholeness approaching God in the offerings we give him. So this idea applies to the offering and the offerer. What do I mean by that?
It's what you offer by the person that's offering.
Mm-hmm. Both have to be whole. I can't bring a lame lamb, and I can be lame and give it, but the priest can't be lame. Does that make sense? Okay. And so that's the idea. Okay, so letter F. Then we come to another obscure passage we're going to look at for a second. Okay? The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, when a bull or a sheep or a goat is born, it shall be 7 days with its mother. And from the 8th day and thereafter it shall be accepted as an offering made by fire to the Lord. Whether it's a cow or ewe, don't kill it, both her and her young, on the same day. And when you offer a sacrifice of thanksgiving to the Lord, offer it at your own free will. On the same day it will be eaten. Okay, so across the board, it's just kind of a weird passage. Scholars seem to believe this passage is just all about compassion for animals. It still seems really cruel to me, but the idea of let the mom have her baby. Don't snatch it away immediately. Let her have that moment, that satisfaction, and just for mercy's sake, don't kill them both on the same day. So there's this compassion. One of my favorite scriptures to quote to my dad when he says I have too many animals is, a righteous man regards the life of his animal. That's the truth. So most sacrifices were male animals. Okay? But this passage stresses the importance, I love this, of allowing, if you do have to sacrifice a female, let her have her baby. I know, it's like this compassion thing. And that's just, okay. Letter G. So far in Leviticus, guess what? Every aspect of life has been instructed. Let's think about this. We've covered marriage. We've covered sex, childbirth, what you eat, what you wear, how you sow and what you reap, how you treat your neighbor, how you treat your animals we just read about, where you go, where you don't go. What is the point of all of this?
Be holy.
Be holy. Yeah.
To be aware.
Be aware. Ephesians says live circumspectly. I love that. Live circumspectly. It's more than just following covenant rules and regulations. Guess what? All of these things, what I eat, what I wear, what I dress, how I approach my husband, all of this, it's supposed to be a reminder of him. It's a stirring, a longing to be with him in his perfection. And in a lot of ways, this temple stuff, every aspect of the Jewish life in the system, it's honestly a reflection of looking back to what he intended in Eden.
That's right.
That's the idea. That I'm clothed with glory. I'm eating in his presence. That our marriage is a picture like this. It's pointing back. And so in other ways, it's also looking forward to what will be. That's what God was trying to do. Okay?
That's what he will do too.
Yes. What do we have like this in our life right now? Mm-hmm. But even beyond marriage, what else?
The body fellowship.
The body fellowship?
That's the bride.
That's right. There should be things in our life, little reminders that keep our eyes on eternity. Not just a sermon on Sunday but pictures of things. But even modesty. I'm going to dress modesty not because I'm a prude, but because I love the Lord and in his presence. I want wholeness and I want purity and I want devotion. These are things. The way I talk to my husband. If we can remember, I did that class a while ago, that you get oil in your lamp.
Yes.
You get oil in your lamp that I'm going to pour out, I think, on his feet in worship someday. Every little thing, when I feel like I pick up a piece of trash, it's all perfection in his presence. All of this matters. And the Jews had way more reminders, and they still do. Things sewn onto their garments, the locks of their hair. They have constant things that are reminding them of God and his presence. I encourage you, find something. If it's not automatic in your life, find things that remind you of him. A bracelet, a ring. I don't care, just something to help you, right? We are lacking this in the Protestant church. I'm way more apt to be liturgical than my husband. We're not in a church that has a liturgy, except for the offering thing that we do. But I love it because I love anchors. I love remembrances. And so find those even in your own family, in your little things that you do. What maybe we don't have to do the Sabbath, but is there something you could do once a week that's special to honor the Lord, or just for you and yourself, communion? I think it's so important, and Protestants lack this a lot of the time. Okay.
They're foreshadows.
Yes.
If we don't do it, we don't know what we're looking forward to.
Absolutely.
really.
Absolutely. You've got to live with an eternal view. All right. Chapter 23. This is probably going to go fast. But chapter 23, then it just switches to this. It's a calendar of annual feast. So 23 is just a calendar of annual feast. We are wrapping up Leviticus, and so God is, like I said, it's kind of a hodgepodge at the end here. But when you compare this list in Leviticus with the list of feasts in Exodus and Deuteronomy, you're actually going to find some differences in places regarding the feasts that they practice. And the reason why most scholars believe, like, why was it different in Deuteronomy, Exodus, and Leviticus when he was talking about the feast that they're supposed to? They believe it's based upon the time in which the books were written. Like, what reminders do I need to throw out there for people? One reason why scholars don't believe Moses wrote every single word of the Torah is because of these slight changes. Like, the audience, like, okay, like, in that, like I said, don't let that trip you up. This shouldn't freak you out. You should be able to be like, okay, these are the words of Moses mostly, but the idea is still the same. Those that carried on the legacy once they got in Canaan and things are kind of going sideways is like, hey, let me remind you, you guys are practicing these feasts, but you're totally missing this one. Like, there were some things that were written down for posterity. Does that make sense? It's probably what happened. So let's look at this. When you compare the list of feasts in the books, it looks like this. Okay, so I'm just going to go over these. The first feast that's mentioned mentioned regularly, and this is fascinating, in Exodus, it's the Sabbath. Now, you don't think of this as as a feast, probably. We'll talk about this. It's the first thing listed in Leviticus 23, a Sabbath. He said these are the annual calendars, a Sabbath. Leviticus treats it as the foundation of sacred time. It's the foundation of sacred events, the Sabbath. And then what's listed next is Passover. Okay? Deuteronomy stresses sacrifice at the chosen sanctuary rather than in individual homes. Like, Leviticus is going to stress different things. Then there's the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Okay, so you can see it's talked about in each three, the same festival, but Deuteronomy emphasizes remembering the Exodus and central worship. You don't find that emphasized in Leviticus. It's fascinating. First fruits, only Leviticus gives a wave sheaf offering ceremony. None of the others mention that the priest should wave an offering, but Leviticus does. Okay? That's what I'm saying. There's just these little, that maybe if you were reading you wouldn't notice. Then there's the Feast of Weeks. Leviticus tells us, we call this Pentecost. Deuteronomy highlights generosity toward the Levites, foreigners, widows, and orphans. But if you read it in Leviticus, this isn't emphasized. Okay? Then there's the Feast of Trumpets. Check this out. It's not listed in Exodus. It's not listed in Deuteronomy. But it's in Leviticus. Only on this calendar. Isn't that interesting? Okay? Then we have the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. Okay? So Exodus describes the rituals of it, but it doesn't call it a feast day. Leviticus, we got tons of detail. It's not even in Deuteronomy, y'all. Isn't that interesting? Only Leviticus lists it on the annual sacred calendar. Fascinating. The Feast of Booths, the Feast of Tabernacles. It's called an ingathering in Exodus, not really a feast. And then you have it there in both other books. Leviticus adds this, though. They're like, hey, I want you to dwell in booths. Dwell in a tent to remember the wilderness wandering. The other books don't say that. And then there's this one, the 8th day assembly. Deuteronomy and Exodus don't even talk about it. But this is a unique detail listed in Leviticus that concludes the tabernacle ceremony. So you've probably never noticed these changes. I thought it would be fun to kind of put them together. And like I said, go home, read them, compare them, have some fun with that. And I only stress this, like I said, because you've probably not noticed it. But depending, letter C, depending on which book of the Torah you are reading, certain things will be stressed and or even omitted based on the current need of the audience at the time. So who was the letter addressing at the time? What needed to be stressed? So it's not that maybe they stopped the Feast of Trumpets. It's just that that wasn't like necessary to stress. It's possible, okay? Letter D, out of the list of feasts, which are not typically, which one of those that I just listed is not typically considered a feast? The Sabbath, right? How do you think it helped the Hebrews, and honestly would help us, to think of the Sabbath in these terms as a feast?
The reminder.
A reminder?
I think the way that we practice it would be more intentional.
Intentional. It's a good word. A feast is something you look forward to, right? It's this is a day to celebrate. And so I think it's important that Leviticus said, hey, we're putting this on the annual calendar as a feast day every single week. It's like your cheat day, right? Yeah, we love those days. Okay, so letter E, people can get really weird about the Sabbath, just saying, okay? Me and my friend yesterday were talking about how weird people can get about Melchizedek, and it's like Christians get so weird. People get weird about the Sabbath. But that's not a new thing. They did that in the time of Jesus, and they do that today. Okay? What was something the Pharisees accused Jesus and his disciples of doing on that day, and why?
Breaking the Sabbath by working
That's right. You're working.
and by walking.
Yeah, walking. Like, oh my gosh, you're picking the grains of wheat and eating because you're hungry. That's working. Jesus was accused of this all the time. Now, the Hebrew word for work in Leviticus 23:3, when he's talking about, hey, do no work on the Sabbath, it's this word right here. And it's the same word for angel or messenger, which is interesting. Why? You're like, what? Do no work? Here's why. Because a messenger, an angel in Hebrew, means a sent one. As in, a sent one is a subordinate one. A subordinate one assigned to a task by a master. So actually, this idea of Sabbath, do no work, this is meant to be rest from any mandatory employment, enslavement type of work, which is why Jesus is like, we're hungry. I'm picking some grain. That is not breaking the Sabbath. But it got to the point where they couldn't start their own fires. They couldn't turn on the electricity, right? By the time, fast forward. But this wasn't God's intention. But in order to be safe, this is what people do. We make more rules. So in Leviticus, God isn't saying don't do any work, but don't what?
Don't make it another day of work.
Don't make it another day for your boss. Okay? Bosses, everybody. If you've got anyone that's working, even me as if you're the father or the mother of the household, let's just anybody that's got like task, chores, things things that we can do together, sure. But this is like mandatory enslavement. Okay, so you can see why Jesus had no problem with plucking grain, like you're eating. Or why he was like getting mad when he's trying to heal a person on the Sabbath. And he's like, don't you guys pull your donkey out of a ditch if it falls on the Sabbath? Well, because that's not mandatory employment. This is the idea. I'm just trying to drive this home so people get weird about this. This is why Paul had no problem going to a congregation for worship on that day versus another day. Seventh-day Adventists will fight you over this. Like, bless Charlie Kirk. I'm glad he didn't get too much into it, but he was a Seventh-day Adventist. Like, they have to worship on Saturday because that's the Sabbath. And it's like, okay, y'all just chill. Chill. That's not what that's about. The Sabbath, in your notes in Exodus 20:11, is directly meant to bring us back to what event? I'll just tell you for time's sake. Creation. 7 days you shall work even as God rested on the final day. It brings us back to the idea of creation. God worked and then rested when he created the world. This is the idea. It's supposed to stir in us worship. Participate. Look what God the Creator did, and we're getting to participate in the rest that he did after creating. And I know we don't think of it this way, but this is what God is trying to drive home. But here's what's interesting. In Leviticus, there's no mention of creation. It doesn't say God rested after 6 days, blah, blah, blah. This passage has none of that. This passage, with its choice of language for that specific word work, brings us back to the Exodus. The Exodus. In other words, right underneath that, this idea ties into the Sabbath as being freed, being a freedom from slavery, indentured labor. This is what God, so sometimes you can celebrate Sabbath as like you're participating in God's creation and his beauty and his worship, and we're resting in all he created. Isn't that wonderful? But other times, Sabbath, here in Leviticus, hey, y'all, let's take a break from that boss who drives us crazy. That sounds good. Don't you love this? Okay. God is watching over people, making sure that they don't work themselves to death. If I told Jeff, I think the Lord took your shoulder out just to get you to sit on your butt for a few days.
Yes.
He has a way about him. I was like, God didn't cause it, but he'll use this. Another interesting fact is that while many things such as high priests, sacrifices, feasts, festivals, covenants, and more were common in antiquity. Like you can go look in among the pagans. They had high priests, they had festivals, they had covenants. But the Sabbath day, that seems to be originated and remained only with Israel. Isn't that interesting? So there's something very special about that day. Okay, let's do a quick look at these other feasts. I'm going to talk fast, so listen fast. Verses 4 through 8 in this chapter regarding the feast. Passover and unleavened bread. I just want to kind of go over this. Passover is the most known feast and possibly one of the feasts that separated and marked Israel the most. But here's the question. Why is Passover and unleavened bread, if you read it in verses 4 through 8, they're lumped together as like one thing in Leviticus? Here's why. We'll talk about this. Besides the Exodus event, Passover marked the beginning of harvest season. Okay, so Passover kind of kick-started harvest. Okay, and it's interesting today, like if they're celebrating Passover, like they avoid certain rice, corn, peanuts, other foods, even their cats, their dogs, their cattle, they can't eat them. It's just interesting. Even the pets' diets are changed for Passover in today's Jewish world. Okay, letter B. So according to the Torah, the Feast of Unleavened Bread officially begins on the 15th day of the first month. But the removal of leaven begins before that, okay? So Passover and unleavened bread, it's because your Passover kickstarts this idea of the harvest is coming in. They happen at they overlap on the calendar. So that's why Leviticus puts them together, okay? It starts on the 15th day right after Passover. So here's what it says. In Exodus 12:18, God says, in the first month, on the 14th day of the month, even at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. And in Exodus 12:15, 7 days you'll eat unleavened bread, even the first day, okay? You'll put leaven out of your houses. Meanwhile, Leviticus 23:6 states, on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. And so I'm just going to put this all together for you. Like, Desiree, I'm not even following you anymore. Here we go. Letter C. 14th day, Passover occurs. Okay? On the 14th day. That's when the Passover lamb is slain, on the 14th. Leaven is beginning to be removed in preparation for the next feast, aka Passover, unleavened bread. By the evening, that brings us to the 15th in the Jewish calendar, okay? Because when does their day start? Right, so it's at sunset. So by the evening, that begins the 15th, unleavened bread is already being eaten with the Passover meal, okay? So then, on that 15th day, through the 21st, the official Feast of Unleavened Bread runs for 7 days. So you can see how, why Leviticus puts them together. Okay? They're two feasts that kind of just coincide. The 15th day, it says there's a holy convocation. That's like this day where you have to set aside everything. And then the 21st is the final holy convocation. Okay. One way scholars and Bible students explain it is that the 14th although that's Passover, it functions as a preparation day for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So that's kind of how people think of it. This is why in Scripture the terms Passover and unleavened bread sometimes overlap, okay? Just helping us understand that. Now, Passover lasts partly through unleavened bread. It's just interesting. So verses 9 through 14, first fruits are discussed here on the calendar. That marked the beginning of the barley harvest. Remember, this is an agrarian society. Their society isn't this urban thing. It's all about farmland, right? There was so much debate over this holiday between the Pharisees and Sadducees at the time of Christ as to what day it was actually supposed to be celebrated. Like, they fought about it. It's quite possibly because of this, the fact that they couldn't even at the time of Christ, decide when should this day be celebrated, and the fact that the temple was destroyed, that this feast has all but vanished from modernity. You won't really see Jewish people talk about first fruits. Probably because it was so debated, and because the fact is you can't go into the temple anymore and wave this thing around. So it's just kind of vanished from their calendar. Letter E, verses 15 through 22 in this chapter talk about the Feast of Weeks, Pentecost, Shavuot. This marked the end of the grain harvest. This is the end of the wheat, the grain harvest, okay? It's commemorated with a grain offering. But if you look at the verses, what is different in this grain offering? Let's look real fast. We're almost done. What's different in this grain offering? I'm sorry I didn't print them all out for you guys. I'm making you work today.
The wave offering.
The wave offering. Yeah. And anything else you notice? 50, that's coming into it, yes. Some people believe, does it say it's unleavened or does it say it's leavened? Can you read it there? And I might have had the wrong verses. With leaven. Okay. That's kind of new, isn't it? On this feast, you eat leavened bread. We don't think about the Jews eating leavened bread. Now, the reason for this is debated. Some believe because unleavened bread represents haste. Get out of here fast. And the completion of the harvest represents relaxed abundance. So that's why this feast has the wave offering with leaven in it. Okay, so it's just interesting. Just another little side note that you probably don't even care about. I just thought it was interesting. Okay, letter F, verses 23 through 25 is the Feast of Trumpets. And this is a feast for what purpose? Look at what it says in verses 23 through 25. Leviticus, verses 23 to 25 in that chapter. What's it say?
And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall have a Sabbath rest, a memorial of blowing trumpets, a holy convocation. You shall do no customary work on it, and you shall offer an offering made by fire to the Lord. Do we keep going?
23 to 25.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so what did it literally, what did it say?
Basically, don't work.
Right, don't worry, but what was the purpose? It said as a memorial. So different versions, mine says as remembrance, that's memorial, and a convocation, a holy gathering. That is that doesn't really feel like a feast, does it? But God calls it that. Now, does this seem tied to any other event? Like Passover is like tied to the Exodus. Feast of Booths is tied to the Exodus wandering. Is this tied to anything? No. It doesn't seem like it. And so scholars debate the purpose for this day. Why was God saying like, okay, on this day, blow a bunch of trumpets, don't work, get together, and just be solemn? Wow, that sounds like some church services, except for the trumpet part. Some say, like, what was the purpose of this? And it's only in Leviticus, mind you. So some say it was to mark the end of the agricultural season. Others say, and I would lean this way, it was to prepare hearts for the solemn festival of Yom Kippur in 10 days. This is almost like, to me, it's like a warning, and this is why they have the 10 days of awe in a lot of, in like Jewish culture. And it's like, dun, 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 y'all get together in 10 days is the Day of Atonement, our most sacred, holy day. Can you imagine if like 10 days before Christmas or 10 days before Easter, like we blew trumpets, got together, we're like, now listen, in 10 days, how are you preparing your heart? I think it's a good idea.
It's like the countdown to Christmas.
Exactly. Instead of just, the Advent idea, this is kind of what this is. I lean that way. It makes more sense than the agricultural season thing. Okay, and then verses 26 through 32, we find the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. This is hardly considered a feast. I mean, I'm like, I don't see where's the candy, where's the cake? Or a festival by today's standards. And so I want you to think of the word feast and festival as a blanket term for this. Any day devoted to God. That's what it means. So can you see how our Sunday is a feast day? Not just because I go to Panda Express usually afterwards, but because, and that's my husband's choice, by the way. He just needs a big bowl of carbs when church is over. But it's any day devoted to God. That could be any day special for you and him. But Sundays are definitely that. So it's a feast, it's a festival. How does God describe, I want you to look at this, in verse 27, how does God describe this day, the day of Yom Kippur?
Convocation for you, usually with your soul.
Yeah. So you're fasting and it's a holy convocation. I don't know if anybody else has a different word there. Verse 27. Now, how is that word? It's an interesting meaning of the word. What is convocation? How's it defined? A gathering, yeah. A calling to a gathering. Yeah. How does this define that day? Just interesting.
Holy assembly.
A holy assembly, very good. A holy assembly. How should that define that day?
You know, it makes sense that we're sharing in the same suffering, like fasting, giving something up, as we are in our feasting.
Right? Yeah, it's so good. Beautiful. Convocation, a holy meeting. If we thought of church this way, that's holy gathering. I think we just would approach so differently. Verse 33 through 44 ends this chapter with describing the tabernacle of booths, or tabernacles and booths, if I can say you can see it called different things if I could talk. This festival remembers wandering in the desert, and how Yahweh provided for them. It's also a celebration of the autumn harvest. Now, what are they looking at those verses? What are they commanded to do in this festival? What's it say? What are they commanded to do?
You shall not work
You won't work. God likes that. Don't work.
for 7 days.
For 7 days. Yeah, what else?
Offering made by fire to the Lord.
Okay. Did I give you all the right verses? Tabernacle. What else?
A burnt offering, drink offering.
Uh-huh.
Did you stay in the booth?
What is that?
Stay in the booths?
What would compare to that for us?
Camping?
Camping. That's it exactly. Camping. That's actually what a lot of Israelites today will do. Camping. This is actually one of the most fun festivals that they still have today. It's a very big deal to them. You can see why. Like, we're going to go camping. We're going to remember how we were wandering in the desert. So they're cooking over the fire. They're doing all the fun things. This is a national week of camping.
In community, I mean, it's not
Uh-huh.
just your family.
That's right. You're doing it together. And I don't have this in your notes, but I want y'all to notice something. Zechariah. Turn to the book of Zechariah. It's on page 840 in my Bible. I don't know if that'll help you. And I know we're going long, but this is like I said, we have one more class after this.
What chapter?
Zechariah chapter 14. This is talking all about the day of the Lord, the final battle. This is the return of Jesus after he has established the millennial kingdom, because I'm not a millennialist, I want you to look at verse 16. So imagine Jesus is ruling from Jerusalem after his return. It says, "And it shall come to pass that everyone who is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem," so that's bad news, "but anyone that's left after that massive battle, shall go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and what?
Keep the feast.
And to keep the Feast of Tabernacles." Isn't that interesting?
And it's a commandment.
It's a commandment. He's like, hey, Jesus is like, okay, now that I am back on planet Earth and I'm going to be ruling and reigning for 1,000 years, there's one thing that we're all going to do. We're all going to go camping together for a week. That sounds like fun.
It does.
We're going to go up to Jerusalem and do this. And he's like, I'm calling everybody to do it. But it says that certain people won't. It says it shall be that whichever the families of the earth, don't go up to Jerusalem to worship the King, Lord of hosts. He's like, I'm not going to send rain on you. He's like, I'm just going to try to get your attention here. Okay? But I find it interesting that the one feast that is mentioned that we will keep after the return of Jesus is this. Isn't that fun?
Jesus Fest.
Jesus Fest, camping in the wilderness. Okay, even though it won't look like a wilderness there, it says. So I find that interesting. So that's what Leviticus covers in that chapter in great detail. It's kind of just stuck in there, but like I said, by the time you get to the end of Leviticus, it's like hodgepodge. Like next week, it's a lot of stuff about death penalty, and then yeah, it just all the last minute things they were throwing into Leviticus, I think, just to keep people on track. So we're almost there. Next week will be our final class, but then I'll have a handout for you that next week for whoever's here in July. I won't be here because I'll be elsewhere. So, all right. Any questions? I know we went long, but any questions? Random stuff. Thanks for sticking with me through all the random stuff. Hodgepodge. Yeah. Have y'all ever? Did you ever think you would do Leviticus? No, I know, right? Thank God we probably won't again for a while. Okay.
Just a comment of somebody I heard teach on the feast and all of that and about a day of rest and keeping the Sabbath. He said, I know some people work on Sunday, but your body, that rest was meant for our physical bodies.
That's right.
And if you can't rest on Sunday, then pick a day of the week that you totally do not work.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Don't you think it'll be kind of like a treat to get to go to Jerusalem?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah. It should be. That's why it's like, why wouldn't you do this? But because people get so engrossed in their work and all that thing. Yeah, it's crazy. Awesome. All right, well, I bless you guys. I'm going to turn off the camera. If those of you that can stay behind for just a second, I'm going to give you some instructions about Sunday. But if you can't, cool beans, all right? Cool beans. Okay, let me go turn off the camera. And
So good.
And in the interim, I just want to introduce my niece Ava.
Ava.
Blessed to have her here this summer.
Yeah.
You're from where, Ava? California.
Oh,
Where in
wow.
California?